People doing extraordinary things to help others.
If he didn't do what he did, we would have died.
Heroic acts that have sometimes meant the difference between life and death.
And he was just crying, "Don't let me die, don't let me die, save me, save me."
Amazing acts of courage.
It was just a natural reaction. This guy needs help.
Captured on dash cams, CCTV, and mobile phones. Incredible stories from the UK.
He put his life at risk just to save me.
And across the world.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
All the people that assisted with my rescues that day are my heroes.
We genuinely owe our lives to him.
Today on Saved on Camera, an off-road motorcyclist hits a rock on a mountain trail.
I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what was below me. I knew there was a cliff. I knew I was going to fall.
In the UK, the serenity of England's Lake District came to an abrupt end for two climbers when they get into trouble.
It hit his head. There was blood everywhere, all over the rock, all over him. You quickly realise that you're on your own. Initially, he didn't know where he was, so it was quite worrying.
A seal is slowly strangling itself on a rope off the coast of the Shetland Isles in the UK.
There was no way it was getting out. The rope was twisted right around its neck.
And in America, a man and his two dogs are trapped when the boat they are on catches fire.
I opened the engine compartment, and at that point, the smoke and big ball of fire just kind of blew back towards me.
An off-road biker in America will go so off-road, he ends up falling off a cliff.
I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what was below me.
70 feet below him lay a pool of water, and he would try and grab anything to break his fall.
I remember this little pine tree slipping through my hands, and I'm like, this is it. Rick, this is how you're gonna die right here.
Rick Hog is a 50-year-old motorbike enthusiast from Texas.
My main hobby, I would have to say, is motorcycling. It's really been a part of my life since in my 20s. Just had a lot of motorcycles, whether they were dirt bikes or road bikes. It became just a passion.
And his passion for all things biking took him to the Elk Mountain Range in the Colorado Rockies.
Me and a good group of friends get together from different parts of the country and really just enjoy the scenic beauty that Colorado offers there.
One of his best friends on the trip is fellow enthusiast Ryan Edward, who he met through biking 20 years ago.
Motorcycles have always been in my life since I was very young. My father got me my first dirt bike at 4.5 years old. Motorcycles is definitely my favorite hobby. Rick and I met through motorcycles, along with several other guys, all based around motorcycles and racing.
The guy's certainly got these crazy skills on a dirt bike, and I think it just comes to him naturally.
And to make the most of their experience, they needed to go off the beaten track to a place called Crystal View.
It's in a very, very scenic yet remote part of Colorado where you don't have cell service for 30 minutes. One section of this that is quite challenging. One site has said it's the most dangerous pass in Colorado. So this is a pretty treacherous descent, and then of course the climb back up, where there's this rock shelf, and so you have a lot of these pointed rocks that you have to navigate across. Ryan and I looked at each other and said, hey, let's make a run at it. There was already anxiety thinking about this particular section. 3 other friends that were there with us that decided to not do it. They would just wait for us at the top. Ryan and I were just gonna go down, turn right around and come back up. We'd be right up in a few minutes.
Leaving the rest of their friends behind, Rick and Ryan set off on their challenging route.
Ryan took off. Momentum is very critical, so if the rider in front of you stalls the bike or struggles, that's going to affect your momentum. So you usually space out on the climb up. The downhill, you do that as well, but it's not quite as important because you have gravity keeping that momentum going typically.
Having reached the top of the trail, Rick begins the downward climb, but his natural instinct kicks in, putting him in danger.
My downhill descent was too slow. It's apprehension, this self-preservation just comes in, right? It's like you need to go faster, but something in your mind goes, hey, if I'm going faster, I'm gonna be in more danger. On a motorcycle, it's key to have your momentum going and really just stick it, and that's kind of where I went wrong that time. I got to what's called head shake on a motorcycle, where the front end gets light and the wheel will kind of bounce back and forth. And when it did this and it bounced to the left, I'm pretty confident that caused me to hit the throttle. And unfortunately, I was pointed in a direction off of the trail and, of course, off the cliff. I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what was below me. I knew there was a cliff. I knew I was going to fall. My kids flashed right into my mind. I have 3 wonderful young kids. The next thing that happened is me scrambling for anything to slow me down. And I remember vividly this little pine tree on the side of the rock. And I remember that slipping through my hands. And I'm like, this is it. Rick, this is how you're gonna die right here.
Rick and his bike end up 70 feet below in a swimming hole, known as the Devil's Punch Bowl, and he's convinced he's about to drown.
The first thing I thought was, you've got to get to the surface. It's unbelievable that you're not dead. I'm sure I was in shock. It's just cold, cold water, but I'm scrambling to get to the surface. I've got all of this gear on. I've got heavy, wet boots, helmet, gloves, goggles. I was thankful to be alive, and so I looked around to try to find a way out, and I was between 2 waterfalls, and so I couldn't go downstream. I would have fallen down this waterfall. I didn't feel comfortable crossing the water because of the current. I was afraid it would take me down, and so I just sat there, and I'm like, right now the best thing to do is be patient.
Unaware of the drama down below, Rick's friend Ryan is waiting for him at the top.
When I got to the top and realized that he had not come within the next couple of minutes, never a bad feeling that something had gone wrong until I walked all the way down. And every corner I would go around, I would expect to see Rick in the motorcycle sitting there waiting for some assistance or pushing the bike to get it over a hard spot. Each corner was kind of a little bit more of a letdown, like maybe there was a problem. I got around the very last corner and could see the bridge at the bottom to where I knew he would be waiting. As soon as I saw that Rick was not there, that is when I got a panic feeling that something was not correct. I moved over to the edge and just started yelling his name. As I'm yelling, I hear a response, and I look over the edge of a cliff, and I see Rick standing at the bottom at the water.
He said, "How did you get down there?" And I made this motion like off the cliff and in the water, and his eyes just got big as saucers. And I think that's probably when the reality hit him of, how I got down there.
I expected to see injury, obviously, looking off the cliff of that far, even after getting an answer. I was just elated to see that he was able to move around.
How do I get out of here? Because I had no clue, because all I see is a rock wall. I did know that there was this one rock that was about 8 feet tall, maybe 10, that had some handholds. I thought I could climb out, but I wasn't sure where that was going to take me.
So I walk up and down the edge of the trail, and I can see where people had previously crawled down there, which would have been not a ridiculously hard climb if you were in hiking boots and some pants and stuff, but in motocross gear and boots and helmets and everything else, it was a much more challenging climb. So I was not real excited to go down to see how to get him out of there, but slid down and got to the point to where we could actually touch hands and know that he could come up the harder part and realize that it was going to be an option to climb right out of it.
So he came down and met me really at the top of this rock. I climbed out, and then, you know, I'm shaking for sure. He helps me, you know, get up, to where the trail was. Of course, you know, it's 70 feet above or so. And when we got up there, it was just amazing. Yeah, I mean, I hugged him, and, it was good to be alive. And that's when the emotions really hit me of what I could have lost. And how quickly, you know, it can go from just out riding on a beautiful Colorado trail to, you shouldn't be there.
And Rick knows just how lucky he was.
So the amazing thing after going through all of this is the only injury I had was a bruise just above my right elbow, and a little teeny scratch that went along with it. The rest of the riders kind of went into kind of support mode as well, and they were able to find me a ride back into town. But you know, the thing that was so special for me is watching my friends come together, just trying to help me get out of there. Ryan specifically. Every day, the rest of my life, I'm going to consider a gift. I really don't think I should be here. So many things went absolutely right. And when I look at it and go, you know, the momentum I had going off the cliff, while that was bad, it shot me off the trail, I think it was critical to my survival because I was able to clear some of these rocks that were below. I had promised my kids, the lesson learned for me is not to get in high consequence areas. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I could lose it all. That's my promise to them. We want to go back there. We will walk it and kind of reflect on, the things that have happened. I look forward to doing that.
In the UK, two mountaineers face a life or death situation when their climb goes wrong.
The last thing I remember was feeling uneasy.
I heard him screaming. He was falling directly above me. There was blood everywhere.
And any rescue attempt would also come with its own challenges.
The helicopter disappeared, and then the helicopter came back, and we didn't know what was going on.
I was starting to shiver. I could die of hypothermia.
England's Lake District and its inherent beauty has inspired artists and writers for centuries. And it continues to welcome hundreds of thousands of tourists every year. It's also on the checklist for outdoor adventurers, two of whom travelled there from London.
I've been climbing for about 20 to 30 years. For me, it's the focus that you have. When you're in the middle of a climb, your mind, body, everything is just focused on right now.
I think there's a couple of options for us to get there.
I got interested in climbing to start with. I was about 15 or 16 at college with a friend. We went climbing indoors and then started going on adventures.
The weather's looking fantastic.
The guys met when Rob joined the Surbiton and Kingston Climbing Club, where Paul was already a member. They both share a passion for adventure.
We've both got a similar interest for doing more mountaineering styles, more challenging climbing.
The thing about Rob is you always feel that he's competent, he's safe. He's going to look after you if anything goes wrong.
This would be tested to the limit in a climb that Rob had his sights set on.
Pillar is one of those climbs that we've always wanted to do, or I've always wanted to do. But it's quite awkward in that it's 3 hours of hiking to get there. I sent an email out to the club, and Paul was the only one who responded out of the entire club, so it was a perfect match.
Well, leave for night.
Leave for night.
Yeah, leave for night.
Both knew there may be risks.
It's a bit of a challenge. The weather's got to be good, and not everyone can climb it. You need to trust your climbing partner, and I trust Paul.
And so the scene was set for what should have been a difficult but successful climb. Having travelled up from London the night before, they set off the next morning.
We climb generally in pairs. One of the pair is leading, is going first, and the other is holding the rope. And if that leader falls, he's counting on the belayer to hold the rope to stop them, because you will fall a certain distance and then the rope should catch you.
We expected the climb to take maybe 3 or 4 hours. The route is 5 pitches. A pitch is a section of the climb, so you get to a point where you can stop and secure yourself to the rock.
We had a quick chat about who was going to take the first lead, which fell to myself, and then proceeded to do the climb.
As leader, Paul's job was to climb to the first safe position, secure a protection device that allowed him to clip his rope into and meant, should he fall, the distance would be minimised.
First 2, 3 pitches went really well, and these were the hard pitches. We were feeling pretty good. A really positive mood throughout the climb.
This euphoria was not to last.
But pitch 3 was the crux, and we'd done that.
Then into what was meant to be the easy 2 pitches.
Paul took the lead on pitch 4.
I started up a groove in the rock. I got to the top of that groove, and I was faced with a fairly blank wall.
We sort of felt like he was going off route. He traversed round to the left to get back onto the route. And at that point, I could no longer see him.
No longer in Rob's eye line, Paul knew they were off the beaten path.
There are telltale signs. The rocks or routes which have had a lot of travel will have wear marks in them where people have placed their protection. At this point, there weren't any telltale signs which I was absolutely comfortable with.
Roughly 15 metres below, and no longer able to see his climbing partner, Rob too was starting to feel uncomfortable.
I remember calling up to him to say, I'm pretty convinced it's over to the left. And I think Paul shouted back, I'm committed now. When he said he was committed, I was a little bit nervous.
Paul was less than confident about his next move, but he had committed.
There was a small pocket to my left and a little nubbin on my right and a shallow crack in the middle. I placed some gear protection in the crack, but I wasn't really happy with it. It was very shallow. I didn't feel that it was secure, really, but it was the best I could do. So I was feeling a little bit apprehensive.
I didn't know how much protection he'd put in at that point or how good it was.
But they ignored their gut feeling.
The last things I remember were feeling uneasy about the gear I placed.
Maybe 10 seconds later, I heard him screaming. I looked up and he was flying through the air.
Later, battered and bruised, Paul is not in a good way, and things go from bad to worse.
First thing I did was grab the phone, and there was no reception. You quickly realise that you're on your own.
Sandnes in the UK, and a boat races to save the life of a seal that's been caught in a lobster line.
This was a full-grown, very, very aggressive seal.
Because they could take your hand off quite easily.
We don't be careful.
He's been stuck for several hours, is exhausted, frightened, and close to drowning.
Careful, careful.
The Shetland Isles are the most northerly point in the UK, famous for their dramatic scenery, thriving fishing industry and wildlife, both on the land and in the sea. On a fishing trip, Martin Garrick was checking his lobster pots when he came across something strange.
When I came to some of the boys and one of them disappeared. And then I realised, oh my God, there's a seal tied to it.
Seeing the seal was struggling, he immediately called for help from the SSPCA. And on duty that day was Teresa Leask.
I spoke to Martin and he said he'd seen this seal with this buoy attached to it. It was tangled. He kindly took me out on the boat just to see. The rope was twisted right around its neck.
And then she wanted to try and get it in the boat. I said, no, the boat's far too small.
The seal was probably about the same size as me, I would imagine. So, yeah, the seal would have had the strength to capsize the boat with me and Martin in it. We knew that time was pressing. So it was obvious straight away that we needed to get a bigger boat.
Teresa's first call was to the local seal experts.
So my first thought was to get Jan and Pete involved. They would know what to do.
To stand a chance of success, it was imperative to find a bigger boat. So they wasted no time in calling round the fishing community for help.
I've had a call about a grey seal pup in trouble.
We spent about at least an hour, maybe more, phoning around everybody we knew to see who might have a boat.
So I rang a friend on the west side. She knew a man with the boat. Sorry to bother you. This is Jan from the Wildlife Sanctuary in Hillswick. We wondered if you could help us. I rang that man. He said he'd do it, so we just headed over there straight away.
With the boat located, Jan and Pete rushed to the harbour to meet up with Teresa and trawler owner Sean Williamson.
So we drove down to the west side, and he was there waiting for us. We met up with Teresa from the SSPCA, and she came on with a wetsuit in tow, and we all steamed off to the place where the seal was.
By now, the seal had been in distress for several hours, and its condition growing more serious by the minute.
When they came back with the bigger boat, then I knew they wouldn't understand where it was. That's when I went back over and showed them where it was.
But being tangled in a long rope and moving around meant finding the seal again wasn't going to be easy.
It must have been at least 20 minutes before we actually caught sight of it. It was coming up to the surface and then disappearing again. Then it would appear somewhere completely differently, so we never knew where it was going to be.
It was trapped. The rope was wrapped around something, and it could come up and get air and go back down again, but it couldn't go more than about 50 yards.
We then had to figure out how on earth we were going to catch it. How do you actually catch a seal when it's going to dive again really quickly?
Teresa had what she thought was a solution to catching the seal, albeit a dangerous one.
We'd struggled to see the rope from the boat, and I thought, well, I would get a better view in the water. It's not the wisest thing to do is to jump in the water with a stressed seal.
It was a bit concerning, just in case the seal got a hold of her, you see. They're great big teeth in them, they'd tear you up in a minute, like.
Teresa, this is not a good idea, but she was determined to do it.
My adrenaline was just pumping just to get this rescue done because I could see it was distress. I didn't know what I was going to get at all. I had to try.
Would Teresa's gamble pay off? Find out later as she risks getting close to this dangerous animal. Meanwhile, two climbers in England's Lake District were nearing the end of their climb.
We were into what was meant to be the easy pitches.
When things started to go wrong.
I was feeling a little bit apprehensive.
The protection device used to secure the lead climber had failed.
I heard him screaming.
And he was falling through the air.
He was upside down, falling directly above me. And I could see around the rope, the protection that he'd put in had come out of the rock.
Paul was right to have been apprehensive. The protection did not hold and he had now fallen, quite severely.
He swung into the rock right next to me, head and shoulder first, clattering into the rock. There was blood everywhere, all over the rock, all over him. I shouted across to him. He didn't really respond. I managed to reach over and grab hold of his harness. I was able to pull him onto the ledge where I was stood. I didn't know what kind of state he would be in because he'd hit his head. First thing I did was grab the phone and there was no reception. You quickly realise that you're on your own.
Their remote location, something that first attracted the pair to the climb Pillar Rock, was now against them.
My second reaction was then just to shout for help, and luckily someone was in the valley. She had reception and was able to call mountain rescue.
By then, Paul had regained consciousness.
The first thing I do remember after waking up is Rob got his coat off and put it around me in addition to my own, and was basically talking to me and telling me what was happening.
Initially, he didn't know where he was, so he actually thought we'd finished the climb and was somewhere else, so it was quite worrying.
But the fall had resulted in other injuries.
I was having intense pain from my shoulder and from my eye and around my eye. I was just thinking, oh, I'm bleeding, and then trying to wipe it out of my face.
Luckily, by then, help had started to arrive.
We'd been sat on the ledge for probably an hour or so before the helicopter came. I jumped up and waved.
But it wasn't that straightforward.
Then the helicopter disappeared. And then the helicopter came back, and I jumped up and waved again, and the helicopter went away again. It was quite dramatic to see them come and then see them disappear again. The helicopter couldn't get in close enough to winch him directly, and we didn't know what was going on.
Also making his way to the scene was mountain rescue volunteer Martin Pickavance. He'd got the call 20 miles away in the classroom where he teaches.
I knew that it was a casualty with a head injury and serious trauma, so I picked up some bits and bobs of first aid equipment that I had in the back of the vehicle and just headed off.
With only this detail, Martin had to consider the worst.
The call of climber is on Megatron. I'll get back to you if there's any further information, over.
Immediately, you're thinking, where is this climber? Is this climber still suspended on the rope halfway up the rock face? Has his partner managed to get him onto a ledge? Have they managed to get him to the bottom of the crag? Has he fallen the full length of the crag and ended up at the bottom? And all those things are tumbling through your head.
Back on Pillar Rock, Paul was conscious that he was deteriorating.
I was starting to shiver, and maybe I was starting to show the first signs of hypothermia. When you're injured in that sort of country, the initial injury isn't necessarily the thing that kills you. You could die of hypothermia.
The rescue team, though, were putting their plan into place.
We put a rope along that scramble so that we could get gear and people onto the top of Low Man. Low Man's a part of Pillar Mountain, if you like. It's the highest point. It's where the rock climbs stop. So we knew that from the top of Low Man, we could carry out a rescue.
All the while, Rob kept a watch on Paul.
He was kind of huddled in and protecting his arm, so I was looking down the valley and spotting people and just kind of relaying what was going on a little bit to Paul, and the helicopter picked some of the mountain rescue guys up, helicoptered them up to the top of Pillar and dropped them off there.
Once we'd set the rescue rope system up, we were able to lower in our first rescuer. Chris went down to the casualty site.
It was a big relief to see him.
These guys were huddled onto the tiniest little ledge. There was no way that Chris was going to get onto that ledge with them. He managed to get a dressing onto Paul's head, did a quick assessment, and then made a decision at that point that the safest thing for Paul and the quickest way to get him out of that area into hospital was to lower him down.
The overriding feeling I got was, people are looking after me. I'll get through this.
Paul, by this stage, was conscious. They abseiled down to a much bigger ledge called Green Ledge, where we had casualty carers waiting to look after Paul's injuries.
For Rob, it meant relief.
It was great to see him down at the bottom and in good hands. I was very relieved.
Paul's strapped into the stretcher. We've gone into a warm sleeping bag. The winchman came down to us and winched Paul into the helicopter and took him away.
At hospital, the true extent of Paul's injuries were now known.
They confirmed that my shoulder was dislocated and nothing was broken. Then proceeded to tug very heavily on my arm to reset the shoulder, and that was quite painful. I got a bleed on the brain. They had a look at it. It was only about 4 mils at that time. They didn't seem to be too concerned. They said they'd sort of basically monitor me.
But Paul, Rob and Martin know that things could have been a lot worse.
If that gear hadn't have held, he would have fallen much further. And if none of the gear had held, he would have fallen directly onto me and possibly could have pulled us both off the rock.
Just pleased that on the day, everything went in their favour and the team were able to help.
And for Paul, the whole event has given him a new perspective on life.
You really start to understand, once you've been through these life-threatening situations, that life is for living. It is about experiencing life, about actually not holding back, not waiting for tomorrow, doing it today. Tomorrow might not be there.
In America, a retired serviceman finds himself and his 2 dogs trapped on a burning boat.
I was exhausted, out of breath, and I thought if somebody doesn't get to me quickly, this is not going to end favorably.
Mike and Jamie Babbitt from Bremerton in Washington are a match made in heaven.
Jamie and I have been married for 4 years now. We've known each other for 5 years.
We've been glued together since then, and we have a wonderful time. We get along great, and we laugh a lot.
The couple share a passion for life on the sea.
While we were dating, we would just walk around the marina and we would just say, you know, we'd really love to just have a boat to be out on the water.
We saved and bought it about 2 years ago, and we've been living on it. It's been beautiful. Obviously, it's a smaller living compartment than what we were used to, and we have 2 English bulldogs named Hootie and Pearl.
The couple and their 2 dogs were enjoying their new life.
It's so peaceful and calming and relaxing, and it's just something special about how you feel while you're on the water.
We moor our boat at the Bremerton Yacht Club in Bremerton, Washington. It's just a beautiful place, and it's like a small family there at our club.
That small family at the yacht club would end up owing so much to Mike.
Jamie had to do some shopping, and I was on the boat with the dogs, and the boat needed to have more fuel put in it, so I was preparing it to take it over to our fuel dock. Then I walked back down into the salon again. There was smoke inside the salon. The stairway down into the passageway lifts up so you can go into the engine compartment. So I lifted that up, and at that point the smoke and big ball of fire just kind of blew back towards me. The fire was just too big, too overwhelming.
Mike immediately thought of others.
I can't let my friends and family of the yacht club suffer, so I drove the boat out as quickly as I could with the limited time I had. I set the chain and the anchor so that it would catch and not blow back into the marina.
Having driven the burning boat away from the people on the marina, he now turned his attention to saving himself and the dogs.
There was no time to make any kind of calls. I grabbed the bulldogs and put them on our aft deck and grabbed their life vests and put them on. I grabbed the paddleboard, which was up on top of our boat, and slid it down into the water, and I put Pearl on first. And Hootie kind of somehow knew what was going on, so he just stepped right onto the paddleboard. After about a minute or 2, I became really cold. I was exhausted, out of breath, and I thought if somebody doesn't get to me quickly, this is not going to end favorably.
Back at the marina, other boat owners became aware of Mike's plight.
I heard people coming down the dock, and they were yelling, "Hey, there's a fire out here. Mike Babbitt's boat's on fire." And that immediately got everybody to kick into gear.
Roy sped out in his dinghy and joined the other club members.
When they pulled me out of the water and into the boat, it was a sigh of relief. I was very winded, out of oxygen, and very cold.
Luckily, by the time we got to shore, the fire department was already there, so they were able to take Mike and lay him down and start assessing the situation.
My throat hurt, which is an indication of smoke inhalation, and I was still extremely cold, and they thought that I might have some slight amount of hypothermia.
By this stage, the boat club had been able to reach Mike's wife, Jamie.
Seeing Jamie's face and embracing each other really kind of made me feel much, much better. And she said, you know, it's just stuff. We can replace it. You and the dogs are fine. And that really gave me a sense of relief.
Jamie then found out just how amazing her husband was that day.
I was just so proud of him for having the state of mind that he did, and just so relieved that he was granted the physical capabilities to be able to do what he did. I think he's done a lot of heroic things.
And the other boat owners were keen to show their appreciation.
After the boat, sinking, I donated a bunch of clothes and shoes like that to Mike, and I know that we started a fund to help the Babbitts out and stuff too.
Mike is all too aware, though, of how bad the situation could have been, and it has changed his mind about his living arrangements.
When I look back on how fast the fire moved, I feel very grateful that it wasn't during the nighttime when we were sleeping. I think that for right now, we've decided we're probably going to live back on land. But boating is still in our future. But I think a home on land is our next step.
Back in the UK, a seal is strangling on a fishing rope and rescuers are trying everything to save it. Local wildlife officer Teresa Leask was determined to reach the seal.
She had a shepherd's crook and she would have hooked it and pulled it in.
Can you get the rope?
But even when she took the staff and tried to do it, the staff just slid down the rope. But she was eyeball to eyeball with the seal.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked, but it was as well. So yeah, we both sort of turned around at the same point. This was a full-grown, very, very aggressive seal.
So we were all getting a bit concerned as to how we were going to actually manage this.
I said it would be great if we had a grappling hook that we could throw it out, hook the rope and pull. And the guy on board said, I've got one.
The next time the seal appeared, he threw the grappling hook and managed to catch the line.
So the best thing that we could do was to winch it up to the boat and try and cut it free.
It looked horrific at the time, but the main thing was we had really sharp knives ready to cut through those ropes.
Even though the seal was now closer to the boat on the winch, they faced more problems.
It's going to choke if we don't be careful.
This was a large, angry grey seal with very big teeth, and it was snapping, and its head was moving really, fast.
Careful. The adrenaline that was going through me wanted to go and be a bit more hands-on, but it's a wild animal, and it was highly stressed. So I stepped back and let them cut it free.
But freeing the seal meant the crew putting themselves in danger.
There's not just one rope around there, there's a few different bits of rope. And so he cut away and cut away and cut away, and we thought we'd freed it.
They cut some of it and it sort of twirled and dropped, but another piece of rope was still holding it.
Because it was freer at that point, it could move its head even more, so it was even more dangerous, because they could take your hands off quite easily.
Jan and Pete's experience of rescuing seals proved to be vital.
You put a towel over the head. As long as you've got that covered, you can handle a seal. If the head isn't covered, you can get a very dangerous bite.
It was a bit scary, but you don't think about it when you're doing it. You just do it.
They put the towel over, and Pete started cutting like crazy to get the other bit off. dropped into the water and shot off in the other direction.
And the seal came past me doing 100 mile an hour. There was a great big cheer under every boat, like, and they're dancing around them.
Well, we all just started shouting because we were so happy that we'd saved it.
I stayed well back, and as soon as it was free, I was getting on the boat pretty fast.
What a feeling that was, to suddenly see this seal escape and go back and swim off into the wild. It's a fantastic feeling.
And we will always have that memory and knowledge that we worked together and we did it together.
We had kind of a group hug and said, wow, we did it. You know, we couldn't believe it.
So through teamwork and local knowledge, the people of Shetland saved the seal from certain death.
Hi, I'm Martin.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Casualty.
Yeah, Casualty. Good to see you, Paul. I'm Rob.
Yeah,
Hi, Rob
nice to meet
Martin.
you,
Nice to meet you.
Phil.
Nice to meet you.
Just a couple of months after their dramatic mountain rescue, Paul and Rob are back in the Lake District to meet 2 of the 20-strong team that saved them.
How you doing then?
My eyes a bit weird.
Yeah, I can see.
So it looks down here.
Yeah.
Because the nerves are still pinched a little bit from swelling.
So that'll go down and it should...
That's what the doctors think. It'll go down and it'll come back.
Yeah. And did you have a minor bleed as well?
I had a minor head bleed.
Yeah.
So that's when they kept me in for 3 days.
And the arm?
Yeah, the shoulder doesn't work very well. I've got nerve damage.
Yeah.
So the signals are not getting to the muscles.
Yeah.
So I can sort of do that.
I've got some issues that I've got to work through. I've got some functionality issues, if you like, because my arm's not currently working. But prognosis at the moment is should get better.
Paul is well on his way to recovery, but the events that day have left him cautious.
I do question myself because I know that I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you think, well, why did I proceed? But then...
Yeah, but then how many times have you been in that position?
I've been
That's called climbing.
Yeah, I've been there a lot of times and gone through it. At the moment, I don't think I'll change.
No. Good.
I'm still going out climbing.
Good.
Yeah.
These were 2 guys that were experienced rock climbers that had an accident. There's no fault to be attributed there. For all intents and purposes, could have been one of us. When you get a message that comes through and you know it's a climber that's fallen, everybody in the team's a climber or has been a climber in the past. So there's a real empathy there.
For Paul and Rob, though, today is also about saying thank you.
We sort of been doing a bit of fundraising by social media for the team.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
It was great to see the mountain rescue guys again and be able to give them something, and great to be able to say thanks.
The mountain rescue teams are just fantastic. They're volunteers. They get no money from the government. They really deserve support, especially from people like myself who require their services, but other people who come out into the wilds of the country.
They're in a really serious position. It's really satisfying to know that we're helping those that need us.
I don't know how you can thank them enough, and I think I will be supporting them through the rest of my life. They're just heroes.
People doing extraordinary things to help others.
If he didn't do what he did, we would have died.
Heroic acts that have sometimes meant the difference between life and death.
And he was just crying, don't let me die, don't let me die, save me, save me.
Amazing acts of courage.
It was just a natural reaction. This guy needs help.
Captured on dash cams, CCTV, and mobile phones. Incredible stories from the UK.
He put his life at risk just to save me.
And across the world.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
All the people that assisted with my rescues that day are my heroes.
We genuinely owe our lives to him.
Today on Saved on Camera. A tourist keen to try hang gliding is left hanging on for dear life.
We got lined up. As soon as my feet left the ground, gravity just took me straight down.
He soon discovers the reason.
Something was not right. I fell completely downward.
He wasn't attached to the hang glider.
We were getting closer to the ground and I was losing grip.
Waiting for him to land, his wife had no idea he was in dire trouble.
He looked up to the sky to see where my husband was going to land. My pilot told me that he had already landed and needs to go to the hospital.
In the UK, a woman targeted by car thieves is saved by two broomstick-wielding heroes.
So the woman is screaming. Without thinking, called my other colleague, come around and say, come outside.
The lady, she was on the floor, and the two guys trying to rob the car.
In the UK, a much-loved family pet disappears on his daily walk.
I couldn't hear him rustling in a bush. I couldn't hear him panting.
Getting himself stuck in a narrow pipe. But after 3 days, his chances of coming out alive are slim.
I arranged where we could dig away from where the dog was trapped in the hope that it was still alive.
And off the southeast coast of America, a cargo ship has capsized with 24 people still on board.
My mind was just reeling. Am I having a bad dream?
The Coast Guard is on its way, but a rescue will not be easy.
As we approached the scene, I could start making the outline of the ship. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really happening.
A couple on holiday in Switzerland have a hang gliding experience that leaves one of them hanging on for dear life.
If I lose my grip, I'm a goner. There's no way I'm going to survive this.
He told me that was the closest to death he had ever come.
Chris and Gail Gerksey from Florida have been married for 27 years. They share a hunger for adventure.
We both have an equal passion for being outdoors and trying new things.
Me and Gail have been in many adventures. Every time we travel, we like to do something a little different on one of the days.
Some vacations are fine just laying on the beach, but other times we like to do something a little adventurous, jet skiing, snowmobiling.
We've been up on a hot air balloon. Normally we've been ziplining. We've ziplined in many places.
Chris is a bit more of a daredevil than I am.
For my 40th birthday, she had purchased me a skydiving excursion, which was really cool.
I don't jump out of airplanes.
The couple were looking forward to their next adventure to Switzerland. First stop was the alpine village of Interlaken, a mecca for thrill seekers, and there was one activity the couple both had their eye on.
I did hear about the hang gliding in Interlaken, and doing my research, it seemed like the best place to do it.
She showed me and I was all in. It looked very cool. We were excited. From everything we've seen, it just looked like a beautiful place. We were excited to get here and we were excited to try hang gliding for our first time and go tour the country.
Despite some last-minute jitters from Gail, the hike up the mountain to the takeoff spot blew them both away.
I was a bit nervous about going hang gliding for the first time. Once we got up the mountain and you could see the beautiful views and everything, I just decided it was going to be gorgeous and to go for it.
The visibility was awesome. You could see across the valley to the next mountain, both lakes in Interlaken. It was just perfect flying conditions. We were really, really psyched to go.
First, though, the all-important briefing from the pilots.
The instructors were great. They seemed to really know how to make us feel at ease and go through each of the steps on how we were going to take off and land.
The pilots were walking us through every step and hooking up, putting our harnesses on, and they were explaining everything as they were going. We practiced a couple times standing next to each other and doing the run. You're supposed to run side by side until your feet leave the ground.
Everything seemed to be organized and safe, and they were very assuring.
My wife got hooked up to her glider. Gail took off with her pilot already. She left first.
I think I looked back before we took off, and I just said, "I'll see you later."
With his wife safely in the air, it was Chris's turn for takeoff.
We walked over to the launch area, and we lined up, and it was like, "Are you ready? Go, go, go!" And then we ran until our feet left the ground.
But things were about to go terribly wrong.
Something was not right with my hookup. I fell completely downward. I was supposed to fly right next to the pilot. Gravity just took me straight down. I had to really just grab onto anything I could. Figured out that I wasn't attached to the hang glider.
Later, Chris will need to use every bit of his resolve to survive the mid-air emergency.
If I lose my grip, I'm a goner. There's no way I'm going to survive this.
In the UK, a woman is under attack at a petrol station by two men who are determined to steal her car. But her attack is being captured on CCTV, and two members of staff aren't prepared to just stand by and watch. Friends Cameron and Rizalet work at their local petrol station in Birmingham, and it's more than just a job to them.
The people who are working here, it's like a family. Me and Rizalet work together is more than 3 years now.
See you later. Okay, thank you.
He's a very kind with the customer, with me, with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Working as a team, he's a very nice person, honest, and very brave.
But what they didn't know is that this bravery would be put to the test when they were on an early morning shift.
I was working inside. He was working on till. I was working in an office.
Outside, on the forecourt, a customer was filling her car with fuel. All was quiet as the customer made her way inside to pay.
Outside was really quiet, so it was dark as well.
But as the woman made her way back to her car, two menacing figures appeared and ran towards her. Within seconds, she was thrown to the ground and her car was moments from being taken. Hearing the woman's screams, Rizalet was alerted to the unfolding drama outside.
So when the woman is screaming, and quickly, without thinking, I called my other colleague, come around and say, "Come outside."
Come outside, it definitely means something happened outside in the forecourt.
As they ran to help the woman, they grabbed whatever was to hand on the way. The colleagues made their way out as fast as possible and wasted no time in confronting the attackers.
The lady, she was on the floor, and the two guys trying to rob the car.
With little thought for their own safety, they ran to the woman's rescue.
I never think anything they have a knife, anything, because I haven't got time to think.
We didn't think about our own safety because we are thinking about that lady.
But could they help the woman and save her car before the thieves escaped?
So I shout, say, "Get off, woman." So when they saw they coming with broomstick, they run. They left the ladies and run.
With the carjackers long gone, Rizlet and Cameron made their way back to check the woman was okay.
She was crying and was really shocked and scared. So I asked they took anything from you. She told us basically they want the keys. It was really, that is very shocking. That is very dangerous.
Still a little bit scary as well because police, you can't catch them.
But these friends have no regrets and would do the same again.
The lady was in danger, so I thought my job to save the woman.
Aim of my life is to help the other people as well.
If anything happen again, so I will do again. My family, they're proud of me.
And it's good for us, when the people are saying, oh yes, you are a hero, you've done a great job. It's very nice for us.
Off the coast of America, a cargo container carrying 4,000 cars and 24 crew members has capsized.
My mind was just reeling. Am I having a bad dream? How many people are we talking about, and how are we going to get the people off the ship?
And just when a rescue attempt is thought to have succeeded, the worst news was to come.
To know that there remained 4 people inside that ship made me feel even worse.
Brunswick, Georgia, on the southeast coast of America, is one of the busiest ports in the country when it comes to the import and export of cars.
Each week there's probably between 10 to 12 of those vehicles, carriers moving in and out of the port of Brunswick.
One such carrier is the Golden Ray, a 72,000-ton cargo ship bound for the Middle East. Just after midnight, it leaves Brunswick Port with 4,000 new cars and 24 crew members on board. But after only 23 minutes at sea, disaster strikes. Captain John Reed was to oversee the rescue operation.
Received a call from the captain of the port who told me he had received an initial report that a ro-ro vessel, a roll-on, roll-off vessel, had capsized on its way out of Brunswick. My mind was just reeling. Am I having a bad dream? How many people are we talking about, and how are we going to get the people off the ship?
But this was no dream. This was a nightmare. With 24 lives at stake, Captain Reed dispatched his rescue teams. First to reach the scene is Pilot Lieutenant Rob Minnow.
As we approached the scene, I could start making the outline of the ship. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really happening.
This is now a race to save lives. The Golden Ray is rapidly taking on water, could sink at any moment, and locating its 24 crewmen is proving a difficult task.
We were able to establish communication with the Coast Guard vessel and a tugboat on scene to assess where all the survivors were at. There was a lot of radio chatter going on, and it was really hard to identify locations of the crew members on that ship.
But a rapid rescue operation is imperative, as by now, the Golden Ray is listing dangerously.
We didn't know the stability of it, and you're looking at this boat that's 70 to 80 degrees on its side. So we decided we wanted to keep our swimmer connected to the aircraft on the hoist hook.
Any maneuver by the rescue helicopter needs to be handled with precision.
We were able to approach the first crew member from about 150 feet above the water, again 70 to 80 feet above the vessel.
But every move Lieutenant Minnow makes could impact the stranded crew still on board the capsized craft.
As we get lower, our rotor wash can impact the vessel and start to turn it. Naturally, with a 656-foot container ship, it's not going to affect it that much. However, for the people that were up on the deck railing, less rotor wash that you're putting on them gives them a better chance of not losing any kind of footing or handhold.
And lowering the rescue swimmer to the waiting survivors is proving difficult for the flight mechanic.
He doesn't have night vision goggles on because it's difficult to hoist that way, but he's trying to position this swimmer almost 130 feet below the aircraft in the dark, in between multiple obstructions, Fortunately, our first person that we hoisted was on the starboard bridge wing, and they had a flashlight.
Locating the first survivor is one thing. Hoisting him back to the helicopter is far more dangerous.
Any kind of small movement you make up at altitude turns into a much larger swinging motion at the bottom. Our great concern was not to move the aircraft around as much, and when it's nighttime, it makes things pretty challenging.
With the first successful rescue, the crew worked through the night to reach the others. But just as they thought they had everyone, they got the worst news. 4 crew members were still on board. Worse still, they were trapped inside one of the most inaccessible parts of the ship, the engine room. Later, the fate of the remaining 4 crew hangs in the balance.
We were tapping on the ship, and that was probably 10:30 or 11 in the morning, and we got no responses.
In the UK, a Spaniel is trapped underground in a pipe. He's been there for 3 days, and his family are desperate to get him back. His whimpers are getting fainter, and the hope of him surviving with no food or water is getting more doubtful by the hour.
I never wanted to give up on him, but every which way I turned, a door was closing. There was no way of finding him.
Help is on the way from an unusual source, and they are pulling out all the stops to try and save him.
I put my phone on, and the next thing I know, I've got an emergency call coming in telling me there's a dog stuck up a pipe. So I thought, oh God, what do I do here?
The Athy family live in Oxfordshire. Mum Kat, Dad James, along with their 3 boys, and their 6-year-old dog Spencer, or Spenny for short.
Spenny is my Cocker Spaniel, who is rather crazy. He loves water, he loves running, he loves chasing, he loves being with his boys and his family.
Come on, Spen, let's go walkies. Come on.
And for busy swimming teacher Kat, one of the nicest parts of the day is walking with Spencer.
Come on.
Spenny loves a walk. As soon as you say the word walk at home, his ears will prick up, he will do that little head where he puts it to the side, and he's desperate to go. He loves to be off lead, he's running around, he's in and out of the bushes, his nose is to the ground sniffing everything. He just loves being outside.
You good boy, come on.
And luckily for them, one of his favourite walks is in the local park, only 2 minutes from their house.
Come on. Tilsey Park is quite wooded. It's got some little areas where you can go off and there's quite a lot of bushes. You can tiptoe across streams. The walk also leads on to a much bigger walk all the way up to Sunning Wells.
Come on.
I know that Spenny can't get himself into too much mischief around here. He can go for a swim when it's hot. There's lots of little trails to do, and the kids love coming here as well.
But one day, whilst out for their usual walk, Spenny did get into some mischief, and it was to turn their world upside down.
It was Saturday afternoon, and we had plans to go to the cinema, so we thought we'd walk Spencer quickly just before we went. Walked across to Tilsey Park. You gonna jump up? Up. Let him off as I normally would, and went for our walk.
Come on. Off you go.
We went over a little bridge, and I whistled him, and he didn't come. I couldn't hear him rustling in a bush. I couldn't hear him panting.
With panic setting in, Kat called a friend to help her search.
Went back to where I had originally lost him, and I could hear this faint whimpering. Howling noise coming from somewhere, but as I moved, the sound stopped, so if I stood in a particular position, I could hear it. So I went down to the ditch and into the ditch. I could hear his crying much more loudly. Had a little rummage around in all the undergrowth and found the opening to a pipe. When I uncovered the pipe, you could hear his howling and you could hear it coming from there. Called the emergency services and they could hear him as well. They tried with their cameras, they tried to find the end of the pipe, but we couldn't locate him.
With night falling and the rescue services unable to locate Spencer, the decision was taken to suspend the search until the next day. But after a sleepless night, there was still no sign of Spencer. And after another day of searching, Kat turned to social media.
We had got in contact with a local group on Facebook who kind of spread the word about a lost animal, and so lots of help was coming. We met with the fire brigade and they came down to try and help us locate the pipe because, of course, it was dark, so it was really tricky to see everything.
Fearing the worst and knowing that time was not on their side, they were reluctantly about to call it a night for the second time.
Never wanted to give up on him, but every which way I turned, a door was closing. There was no way of finding him, and by this time he'd stopped making noise.
Later, a desperate plea on social media brings last-minute hope from a special robot camera.
They said, "Let me try and get your dog out." And I thought, if you want to come and try, you can come and try. I'm willing to try anything.
High above the Alpine mountains in Switzerland, a thrill-seeking couple were trying hang gliding for the first time, but one of them quickly found themselves in trouble.
As soon as my feet left the ground, I was supposed to fly above. I fell completely downward.
Then he made a terrifying discovery.
Quickly after that, I figured out that I wasn't attached to the hang glider.
Chris was now left holding on for his life in midair.
I was just looking to grab onto anything I can. I had a grip on one of his harness grabs. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna get through this.
At this point, the pilot had become aware of the unfolding emergency and took action.
He grabbed at the back of my harness a couple times, and I just, I kind of knew that it was just me holding on.
The pilot had a dilemma. He needed to keep hold of Chris, but he also needed to steer both of them in an emergency landing.
At first, when he was grabbing onto my harness, he was trying to fly with one hand. We made a quick right turn over some houses. I think because my weight was pulling down so hard on one side, I think he was having some difficulty trying to fly it.
Chris suddenly became aware of his surroundings.
That first time I looked down and I said, if I lose my grip, I'm a goner. There's no way I'm gonna survive this, or I'll, be in really, really bad shape. So I just tried to concentrate with everything I had and just hold on. Once I got a hold of the bar that went across, which is the landing gear bar, I locked down with my left hand and my right hand, just looking to grab onto anything I can. I had a grip on one of his harness grabs, and I was just trying to figure out how I'm gonna, get through this.
The worst thoughts were flashing through his mind.
I pictured one time in my head of me falling through the air.
But he quickly resolved to fight.
Right after that, I just decided that that's not gonna happen and held on as long as I could.
Trying to stay positive, Chris couldn't dismiss the reality that they were now hurtling towards a town, searching for a safe place to land.
My pilot was kind of trying to beeline it down to the ground as quickly as he could. He was telling me to hold on, to hang, to grab here. I just couldn't get a good grip with, so as the farther we were going, the farther my right hand was getting down his shoulder, then his side, and then at the very end, I was holding onto the fabric of his pant leg on the back, so that really wasn't doing much for me.
As Chris was starting to lose his grip, the pilot was his only hope.
He was grabbing onto my safety harness and trying to hold on to me there. At one point, he had to let go totally because we were getting closer to the ground and he needed more control on the glider.
Chris was struggling, but knew that a fall even from that height would be fatal.
We were getting closer to the ground and I was losing grip with my left hand. When I saw the ground coming up, we were getting closer and closer, and I think another 5 seconds, I would have let loose no matter how high I was.
Having almost made it to the safety of the grass, Chris's ordeal wasn't over yet.
Once my feet scraped the ground is when it pulled my grip free. I was still holding on when my feet did hit the ground. We were coming in probably, I would say, about 45 miles an hour. So it'd be like jumping out of a car. I kind of hit the ground hard and I tumbled a few times. I sat up and I looked down at my wrist and it was all bulged out and I knew it was broken.
Meanwhile, Gail had landed and was unaware of Chris's terrifying ordeal.
My flight was absolutely breathtaking. Really had the feeling of flying like a bird. My landing was perfect. I looked up to the sky to see where my husband was going to land. My pilot told me that he had already landed. Once I did see him, as they pulled the van up, he was holding his arm, so I knew something was either fractured badly or broken badly. When they told me he was going to the hospital, yeah, I didn't know the extent of his injuries at that time. I was still calm at that point, just trying to figure out what was going on.
When they reached the hospital, Gail and Chris finally had a chance to talk.
He told me that was the closest to death he had ever come, and I was like, why? And that it was that point that he told me that he was not attached to the glider.
In the emergency room, Chris's injuries became apparent.
When I impacted the ground, I broke the top of my bone in my arm outward because I impacted pretty hard. And so I had to have a titanium plate and 7 screws installed. And then I had a torn bicep tendon on my left side because I was, I guess, holding on so long that I tore my bicep tendon.
However, Chris knew he was lucky to have escaped with his life, knowing how close he'd come to facing death.
We were taking x-rays. I was, gonna need surgery, but, I was alive and I was getting taken care of, so I was just trying to keep positive.
And his fighting spirit remained strong, despite the harrowing events of their first day on holiday.
We thought about leaving and going home, but Chris said, no, we're gonna finish out our trip and try to enjoy what we had left.
I was extremely lucky that day. It was, like winning the lottery of life, I guess.
Back in the waters off the coast of Georgia, USA, a mission is underway to rescue 24 crew members of a sinking cargo ship. But devastating news has reached the rescue team. 4 crew members are still trapped on board. As the dawn breaks and the 4 missing crew remain trapped, the situation takes a horrifying turn when fire breaks out.
I looked up at the side of the boat and it just started to billow smoke, just huge plumes of smoke. It felt like being in a movie at first, just watching this smoke screen start to develop. We just happened to be downwind of it, and very quickly I realized that the smoke was starting to come our way and was going to envelop us.
Rescuing the remaining trapped crew members is now looking bleak.
The sun was coming up, and to see that ship there on the horizon, laying on its side, just made my heart sink. And to know that there remained 4 people inside that ship made me feel even a little worse, because the fire and smoke were really what kind of had us back off.
Forced to retreat, the helicopters would need to wait until the fire eventually died down to make another approach and board the hull.
A representative of the ship was out there with us, an engineer. He said, let's give it a shot. Let's go ahead and tap on the ship. And we were tapping on the ship, and that was probably 10:30 or 11 in the morning. So nearly 9 hours plus after, and we got no responses. We could hear cars crashing down inside every now and then, but we did not hear tapbacks.
There's the chance that this rescue attempt has come too late, and the crew has already perished. But the team are not willing to give up, and their tenacity is about to pay off.
That afternoon, crews out there continued to do it and started getting a reply. You would tap 3 times and you would get 3 back. You would tap 4 times and they would get 4 back. And to hear that they had made taps was just a game changer, really, for everyone. To know that, hey, we're not just dealing with a ship now. There's still people alive.
With renewed hope, engineers are drafted in to penetrate the thick metal hull in a bid to reach the men. Once again, the Coast Guard helicopter plays its part. Its pilot is Crystal Barnett.
We had heard, hey, we have contact with the crew inside, and that was a huge release because it's like, oh, you have contact with the crew, yes, and we have contact with all 4, and they're all alive. So that was definitely like very elating, happy moment. Everybody was really relieved, like, wow, we're not going to have to even cut into a different part of the ship, and they're confirming that all 4 people are alive in the same location, which is honestly kind of lucky that they're all there together and supporting each other in that really horrible environment.
But the relief is short-lived.
The time became critical because I'm getting the readings that we're getting from the space where the guys are at, and it's telling me, hey, there's a problem here with the air that can't support life.
They must cut through the hull and fast. But first, the helicopter needs to get close to the area to drop a salvage crew, and that isn't easy.
We've definitely trained to land on small areas and structures like that, but definitely it's a unique place to land that it's an overturned vessel. We ended up doing 5 total landings. I kept power on the aircraft, and I didn't put all of the weight down of the aircraft. So if something were to happen for some reason, we'd have an easy out, just pick right back up and fly away. Once they cut into the ship, they realized that the air quality in the hull was so bad that it was creating a explosive hazard. So when they were cutting into the ship, they had to kind of keep that clear for the sparking hazard. And then also, knowing that the crew inside was breathing very toxic air, they immediately wanted to start blowing fresh air. And so a lot of the equipment that we delivered to the boat was actually leaf blowers, the backpack style leaf blowers that you would use on your lawn. We delivered those so they could blow air into the hole that they cut so that the air would be fresher for the crew members trapped inside.
As the day progresses, the team continue with their efforts and eventually create enough of a hole to access the ship.
It was 140 degrees plus Fahrenheit. For those crews going in and out of the hole that had been cut. Initially, it was just a scope hole to put something in there, confirm that there were people alive and they were in the right spot. And then they were able to drill a larger hole, which was about a 3-inch hole, and put water through and be able to push air, clean air, into the space where the men were at.
Finally, after 30 hours and the tireless efforts of the rescue teams, the remaining 4 crew members are free.
Woo! Yeah!
When that last guy came out, and I asked all those guys to stand up there so I could get a picture, and I just said, hey, you guys made it possible, and you've just made the best day of my career. And it truly was.
Meanwhile, back in the UK, his family haven't given up hope for a safe return, but time is running out.
I never wanted to give up on him, but every which way I turned, a door was closing.
A desperate Kat turned once again to social media for help, posting on a local site. This resulted in more offers of assistance, including one that surprised everyone.
I then had a message from Thames Water, and they said, let me try and get your dog out. And I thought, if you want to come and try, you can come and try. I'm willing to try anything.
And true to their word, they turned out that night, sending their contractors.
They had a camera that was on a robot that they put into the end of the pipe. As the robot was going through the pipe, we were all stood there watching the little TV screen in the back of the Thames Water van. And as it kept going through the pipe, it went for over 100 metres, and suddenly you saw Spencer's bottom. You could see that he was shivering and shaking, which was the best news because it meant that he was alive.
But although they could see Spencer, there was nothing they could do till daylight, and it meant another sleepless night for Kat.
Hello, Jason Major speaking.
The next morning, it was Jason Major, a fields operations specialist for Thames Water, who took the call from the team monitoring the pipe.
Head over there now. All right, cheers. Bye.
I came to work on the Monday, I put my phone on, and the next thing I know, I've got an emergency call coming in telling me there's a dog stuck up a pipe. So I thought, oh God, what do I do here? And I looked at the mapping. I could see it actually wasn't one of our pipes. So I then had to go in and initiate exactly where the problem is, which was underneath one of the AstroTurf football pitches. So I said, whatever we could do, we must get this dog out somehow.
But to get Spencer out, they would need to dig up the pitch. And for that, they would need permission from the owners, Tisley Park.
I arranged where we could dig away from where the dog was trapped in the hope that it was still alive. And then once we got the pipe exposed, we cut our window. I wasn't sure whether the dog was alive or not because the camera footage, he was just not moving at all.
I was invited in as they then removed the last part of the pipe. I then got down into the hole and my arm was just that little bit too short to reach Spencer.
I had quite a long arm, so I spoke to Kat and I said, has he got a tail? She said, well, he's got a little stump. So I thought, great, I've got something I can sort of grab hold of. So I managed to get my arm up the pipe and got hold of his tail. Once I started to give him a little pull, he had a little moan, so I could tell he was alive. So I thought, thank God for that, you know. It was great, you know, to see him alive and to hand him to Kat. She was so over the moon that he was okay and safe.
And he was shaking and muddy and filthy, but he was very pleased to see me. It was the moment that I've been waiting for 3 days.
And a year later, Spencer has made a full recovery from his adventure.
He is very much back to normal. You wouldn't think that he'd been through a stressful ordeal. The only thing I do is I don't leave him in the dark. I think that's more down to me. I think if I'd been in the dark for 3 days, I wouldn't want to be in the dark, so I always make sure I leave a light on at bedtime.
A Florida couple were hang gliding on holiday in Switzerland when disaster struck.
We were getting closer to the ground and I was losing grip.
After an emergency landing, he was lucky to escape with just a broken wrist and a torn tendon. A couple of months later, he was finally able to watch his brush with death.
I told the story before I saw the video to my friends and family, and I was trying to see how accurate my story was watching the video.
But it's still not an easy watch for Gail.
It gives me anxiety, and just watching him switch his grips so many times and almost fall to his death was, you know, petrifying.
Chris made a video of his experience, and it went around the world.
The video going viral was a shock to me, and it was like 4 million views in 2 days. And
someone who saw the video and was keen to fulfill Chris's dream was Interlaken tourism manager Natalie Rothlin.
I first saw Chris on social media, and it really impressed me how he handled the whole situation. I contacted him because I wanted him to get another experience of Interlaken and not to last it with the bad memories.
But it was not without a few nerves.
I was a little apprehensive about coming back and doing it again, but I knew that we probably needed to do this so we can really just move forward.
A year later, and the day has arrived for the couple to return to Interlaken for their second hang gliding flight.
Hi Chris, I'm Natalie. Oh, let's do. How are you?
Hello.
Hi, I'm Natalie.
Very good to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You're a bit nervous of your flight today? Not a little bit. Okay.
You will be landing at the...
Yeah, we saw them down.
Being back at the exact same takeoff location brought mixed feelings.
It is quite surreal being back here to the same spot that we launched from before. Feeling good about it, and then, you know, the butterflies came in a little bit because I was looking down the same runway that I did the original time, and, you know, memories were coming back in my head, so.
In my wildest dreams, I didn't think we would come back a year later, but I'm here now, and it's going to be good.
It was time to fight the nerves and take flight, but not without a rigid check of his harness.
We all checked that we were attached before we flew.
Once we did take off, though, it was absolutely fabulous.
And we're gonna run on 3, 2, 1, and go, and run, 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 run. Off we go, hello.
Really, really good to see him take off and just soar away like you're supposed to on a hang glider.
I felt my harness tugging on my safety vest, so I was quite sure that I was properly hooked up this time.
Nerves turned into joy, definitely, when I took off. Just took it all in. The views were spectacular.
It is extremely beautiful. You're effortlessly flying through the air. I'll do it again in a heartbeat. It was cool. Yeah, everybody needs to try that at least once.
After successfully completing the flight, Chris and Gail's faith in adventure is now fully restored.
We would definitely do it again, yeah.
We may take lessons now.
You never know.